A man was convicted almost 4 decades after he ended the lives of 2 women in California. Then he interrupted his own sentencing hearing by singing in front of his victims' families. In 1986, 18-year-old Michelle Xavier and 20-year-old Jennifer Dewey's naked and lifeless bodies were dumped in a remote area of Fremont, California. Michelle and Jennifer attended a birthday party dinner together on February 2nd. Hours later, the young women were found deceased by a motorcyclist along Mill Creek Road. They had been shot and stabbed. Despite numerous tips following the crime and thousands of leads, the case went cold for more than 3 decades until a detective found that it was David Mish's DNA under Jennifer's fingernails. At the time of the crime, Mish was an illegal substance addict who lived in the Fremont area and was known to burglarize businesses. Mish's father, Robert, was an alcoholic who was aggressive towards his wife and son. As a result of the constant physical assaults, he lost all interest in the educational process and spent most of his time on the streets. He was convicted in 1990 for taking the life of 36-year-old Margaret Narcisa Ball and sentenced to life imprisonment. Mish is also linked to the disappearance of Michaela Joy Gerecht, a 9-year-old girl who was kidnapped from a Hayward parking lot on November 19, 1988. Michaela was with her friends at Rainbow Market when a man moved her scooter closer to his car. When she tried to get the scooter back, he grabbed her and drove away with her in his car. She was never seen alive again. In 2020, Mish was charged with ending the life of Michaela. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office wrote, "Mr. Mish claimed that he had seen the 2 young women being kidnapped at gunpoint and tried to save them. He used this as an explanation for the presence of his DNA in this case." Mish's DNA and lies were presented as evidence at his trial. Another piece of evidence stemmed from one of the victim's hands, which had a partial license plate number written on it. The plate matched a vehicle associated with Mish. On December 19, 2024, a jury found Mish guilty on 2 counts of first-degree slaying. On January 21, 2025, during his sentencing hearing, family members were reading their victim impact statements when Mish disrupted the proceeding by singing inside the courtroom. The sheriff's deputies then removed him from the courtroom. The prosecutors said that Mish displayed disrespectful behavior purposefully so that he would be thrown out. Chief Assistant District Attorney Royal Roberts said David Mish's behavior in court was not only reprehensible, but a blatant display of no remorse for taking the lives of Jennifer Dewey and Michelle Xavier. The families of these 2 young women have been waiting nearly 40 years to receive justice for their tragic and senseless slayings. Roberts said, "Thanks to the jury and this conviction, Mr. Mish will be held accountable. I want to recognize the prosecution team for their professionalism and hard work." On this very complex case, starting with Deputy District Attorney Allison Donovan, 63-year-old David Mish will begin serving 2 25 years to life sentences consecutively in state prison after he completes the 18 years to life sentence he is currently serving. After nearly 40 years, the loved ones of a slain Colorado man finally got the justice they have been seeking. Sheriff's detectives on the Treasure Coast have made an arrest in a cold case that happened a quarter-century ago near Fort Pierce, Florida. A happy couple's lives would be taken after they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Keychain with a photo of a young girl would bring the necessary breakthrough. In October 2000, 77-year-old Robert Hardwick and 58-year-old Vernice Reese had been planning to get married. Unfortunately, a tragic crime hindered their plans. On October 22nd, Robert and Vernice were stabbed to their end. Their double-story house on Kings Highway, south of Indrio Road in Fort Pierce, Florida, was set on fire. After the house fire was extinguished, the bodies were found inside. The detectives believed that the perpetrator stabbed the couple and used gasoline to burn the home down and get rid of all evidence. There was no soot or smoke in their lungs, so they lost their lives before the fire was started. Robert's car, an Oldsmobile Alero, was then stolen and later found in Wilton Manors in Broward County. A longtime employee of Robert contacted the police and indicated that the day before the fire was reported, Robert heard someone downstairs at his house. When he went downstairs, he found a Hispanic male wandering around inside of his garage. The employee then came to the home, and the man told Robert that his truck had broken down. The employee gave the man a ride to what then was an Eckerd substance store at Kings Highway and Indrio Road, about a mile from the home. DNA and other evidence were collected at the scene, but unfortunately the case went cold. 23 years later, in 2023, St. Lucie County Sheriff's Detective Paul Taylor took a new look at the case. He said, "We went through, started organizing things, and we sent a bunch of things off for DNA. DNA advances were credited with helping track down the suspect." But Taylor said, "A lot of the witnesses that they tried to speak to back then really just did not cooperate. Now they have come forward with more information. I found new witnesses that have come forward that I have talked to. What investigators learned from witnesses and phone records was that the couple arrived home from dinner and Robert was going to go to bed. Vernice was about to head out to a birthday party when she decided to go back into the house and give Robert his medication before bed. But she made one last phone call to a family member to say that she heard Robert arguing with another man upstairs. Then the phone line got cut off. The investigators believed that Robert was possibly going for his gun in the bedroom when the perpetrator stabbed him before later stabbing Vernice and leaving her at the top of the stairs and setting the place on fire with gasoline. There is solid evidence tying 58-year-old Julian Romero to the double slaying. Detective Taylor explained, "We have got witnesses that said he was there. So now also, we have DNA recovered from the scene of the fire of the slayings. We have his DNA recovered there. We have his DNA recovered in the car." Richard Del Toro, St. Lucie County Sheriff, is applauding the work of his detectives. "I think it is so important to realize when a fresh set of eyes get on these cases, you can see things that were not seen before." In January 2025, Honduran citizen Romero was charged with 2 counts of first-degree slaying. He is in the country illegally and has an ICE detainer. At the time of his arrest, he was already behind bars. He is serving a life sentence since August 2002 in an unrelated case from Broward County on charges of assault and kidnapping. He is behind bars at the St. Lucie County Jail. He was arrested for the crime he is serving now after being found sleeping in Robert's car. In searching the car and property Romero said was his, the investigators turned up a can of pepper spray in a bag in the trunk. A bloody fingerprint on it was recently determined to belong to Robert. It is assumed that Romero was only trying to steal the car after he saw it the previous day when he was in the garage, but then got confronted by Robert and Vernice, and it went bad. The big break came when the detectives determined that a photo of a girl on a keychain found in the victim's stolen car was that of the suspect's daughter. Detective Taylor said, "I think even the state attorney, whenever I told him about this keychain, and he was like, 'You have got to be kidding me. Come to my office right now.'" He added, his story was, "I just climbed in there to take a nap for a couple hours." If you are climbing in there to take a nap for a couple hours, why would you take the keys out of the ignition and put your daughter's picture on it? Detective Taylor described his reaction to having the case solved. "It is fantastic. It is a great feeling. This is a double slaying, and it is 25 years old." A former Florida sheriff's deputy has been identified as the suspect in a crime that took place 45 years ago. At around 2 a.m. on November 5, 1979, Sheriff's Deputy John Greer radioed dispatch to say he discovered a sling at the farm store in Ridge Harbor, Florida. The victim, 25-year-old Adele Marie Easterly, an assistant manager at the store, had been shot once in the back and once in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. The perpetrator, the sheriff's deputy said, escaped with approximately $7.34 from the store. Some deputies were suspicious about John Greer, but they did not have substantial evidence to connect him to Adele's case. A few months earlier, on August 27, 1979, Greer had called the sheriff's office to report that his wife, Jackie Greer, had shot herself in their home in Port Charlotte. He told the responding deputies that he was awakened by a pop and saw smoke coming from a closet in the home. Inside, he found his wife's body. The investigators had suspicions about the incident, but they were not able to link their concerns with evidence. Greer remained free. Roughly a year later, on October 3, 1980, Greer resigned from the sheriff's office 4 days after a female friend of his was found deceased. She was found sitting in her Ford Mustang in a wooded area of Port Charlotte, Florida. 9 days after she was reported missing by her husband, the sheriff's office suspected that she overdosed on pills because empty pill bottles were found in the car and a note was left behind. Her husband, however, told the sheriff's office that Greer used to follow her around and attempted to have relations with her. The sheriff's office followed up on numerous leads in Adele's case, including a friend who said Adele was having an affair with a married Charlotte County sheriff's deputy. The friend recalled Adele describing the deputy's account of his wife's demise as an accidental shooting that occurred after an argument. Eventually, the case went cold. Greer went to work at other police and sheriff's offices, usually near the west coast of Florida. He was also a pilot and held various aircraft positions. 36 years later, in 2016, the Cold Case Unit released a news statement detailing their suspicions in the case, without giving a name. They said that it was to let potential witnesses know a law enforcement officer was potentially involved. Their hope was that someone would come forward with information, and finally, There was a breakthrough in the case. A former sheriff's office explorer came forward and told the investigators that Greer had assaulted her and spoken about ending the life of Adele. She was also working the night that Adele lost her life and said that she saw Greer had blood on his bare hand. The detectives found the woman's allegations credible, but the statute of limitations for potential crimes linked to the alleged assault appeared to have run out. So instead they focused on the cases of Adele Easterly and Jackie Greer. The cold case unit developed probable cause to arrest Greer, and in April 2023, the investigators traveled to Tennessee, where he was living in an extended care facility in Kingsport. In his interview with the investigators, even though he was bedridden and could not carry on long conversations, Greer admitted to shooting both Adele and his wife. The deputies also investigated another suspicious fatality, and some reported assaults connected to Greer, but were not able to gather conclusive evidence on those cases. Sheriff Bill Prummel said the following in a statement about the case. "I want to be clear that this individual does not represent the overwhelmingly great men and women who have worked for this agency over our century-plus of existence. It was determined that Greer would never be well enough to stand trial. He passed away at the care center in Tennessee on March 2, 2024. He was 77 years old. In January 2025, after 45 years, the sheriff's office says the long unsolved case is closed." In the dimly lit ambience of Studio 82, a southwest Calgary bar owned by John McGee, Adrienne McCall's life took a fateful turn. At 19, she was bright-eyed and eager, working alongside her stepfather to save money for nursing school. But the bar's gritty nightlife also drew Stéphane Parent, a 31-year-old drifter with a magnetic yet volatile charm. Their connection was instant. Parent's worldliness intrigued McCall, while her youth and optimism seemed to anchor him. Colleagues, however, sensed danger. Whispers of Parent's temper followed him. One co-worker recalled him smashing a beer bottle during an argument, while others noted McCall's nervous laughter, masking bruises she brushed off as accidents. The relationship's toxicity deepened when McCall became pregnant in 2001. Friends urged her to leave, but she clung to hope, dreaming of a family. Tragedy struck in October 2001, when her baby, a boy she'd named Ethan, was stillborn. Devastated, McCall suffered a second miscarriage months later. Grief isolated her further, even as Parent's outbursts escalated. By early 2002, the couple was drowning in debt. McCall, determined to rebuild, moved back with McGee and landed a job at a chic downtown bistro. Parent, unemployed and spiraling, slept in his rusted sedan, his resentment simmering. February 14, 2002, began as a day of mundane routines. McCall texted a friend about meeting for drinks after her shift. Parent, meanwhile, awoke to find his car, his only shelter, towed from a parking lot. Desperate, he allegedly called McCall pleading for help. What happened next remains shrouded in mystery. McCall never arrived at work. Her co-workers grew uneasy when she missed her lunch shift, a first for the reliable teen. By evening, friends waiting at a pub received no answer to their calls. Meanwhile, Parent vanished too, along with John McGee's blue 1998 Honda Civic. Surveillance footage later showed Parent at Calgary International Airport at 10:06 a.m. on February 15th, purchasing a one-way ticket to Ottawa. The abandoned Honda, discovered days later in the airport lot, became a chilling time capsule. In the trunk, McCall's sneakers caked in mud. 2 parking stalls over, investigators found Parent's discarded jeans, the left pant leg stained with dried blood. On February 17, 2002, a rancher tending cattle near Cochrane, Alberta, spotted a flash of color in a frozen field. It was McCall's body, partially buried in snow. She wore only a sweater and underwear. Her shoes, coat, and pants were missing. An autopsy revealed the grim truth. She'd been strangled, then bludgeoned repeatedly with a rock found nearby. Bruises on her wrists suggested a struggle, and traces of soil under her nails hinted at a desperate attempt to claw free. Parent immediately became the prime suspect, but forensic science in 2002 lacked the precision to definitively tie him to the crime. The blood on his jeans, too degraded for conclusive DNA testing. His flight to Ottawa, dismissed as circumstantial. With no witnesses and no confession, the case stalled. 16 years in the shadows. For over a decade, McCall's family kept her memory alive. Her mother, Linda, plastered Calgary with missing person posters long after the case went cold. McGee, racked with guilt, sold Studio 82 and funded a scholarship in McCall's name for aspiring nurses. Meanwhile, Parent drifted across Canada, working odd jobs under aliases in Quebec. Then, in 2018, a breakthrough. Calgary's cold case unit, armed with cutting-edge DNA technology, re-examined the bloodstain on Parent's genes. This time, analysts isolated a match, McCall's DNA. Combined with soil samples from the crime scene that matched residue in McGee's Honda, prosecutors built an irrefutable case. On February 17, 2018, exactly 16 years after McCall's body was found, police arrested Parent at a rundown motel in Gatineau, Quebec. At trial, the prosecution painted a damning portrait: Parent's pattern of control, his flight after the murder, and the forensic jigsaw linking him to the crime. McCall's friends testified about her fear of Parent, while text messages revealed his threats: "You'll regret leaving me." Parent's defense argued the evidence was circumstantial, even hiring a biomechanical expert to claim the blood spatter could have been transferred innocently. But the jury wasn't convinced. In 2021, he was sentenced to life in prison, his appeals later rejected by higher courts. Today, Adrienne McCall's story reverberates beyond true crime forums. Her case spurred Alberta lawmakers to allocate more resources to cold cases and domestic violence programs. A mural in Calgary's Beltline district immortalizes her smile, captioned, "Gone but never forgotten." For Linda McCall, closure remains elusive. "I see her in every young nurse," she told reporters after the verdict, but no sentence can bring back her laugh, her light. Parent, now in his 50s, maintains his innocence from prison, though his appeals have run dry. In the end, McCall's tragedy is a stark reminder: love should never leave bruises, and justice, however delayed, can still rise from the cold.